Well, a few more sleeps in number one to land, hitting the road out far west. Ohio State set to battle with the Huskies on a road test on Saturday. Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin, along with Coach Ryan Day, will try to protect that O in that record. Entering the Big Ten opener for both teams, Day is a perfect 48-0 against league opponents not named Michigan or Oregon, but that does not include a matchup when it comes to Washington. Take a look at this series. There's been a few over time. Ohio State leading the way 5-1 when it comes to Washington there. They won the last meeting back in 2018, that Rose Bowl 28-23. Urban Meyer, of course, at the helm at that time, but Washington's only win coming in 1994 at home. Quite some time since then, but maybe they could run it back Saturday at 3:30 Eastern. All right, let's dive into this. The best two-piece in the business for this assignment here, Chris Fetters and Dave Biddle tapped in for this one. And Chris, we'll start with you in terms of the Huskies coming in a little banged up on the defensive side, but kind of fill us in on that side at what you're hearing about them maybe putting the brakes on the Buckeyes here.
Yeah, they had some issues in terms of in the Apple Cup. They were hoping that Tacario Davis, one of their impact cornerbacks, was going to be able to play, one of the 6'4" guys that's alongside Ephesians Prysock. And Tacario did not play in that game. And Jed said on Monday that it is going to be a game time decision on Tacario Davis, whether or not he plays. And then the other big piece of news defensively was that their middle linebacker, one of their middle linebackers, Buda Alukta, got hurt during the Apple Cup, and Fish said that they weren't sure exactly what was going to be happening with Buda, but he did say that he did not expect him for a few weeks. So obviously that means he is not going to be available for this game against Ohio State.
Some big names there when it comes to them, of course, on that defensive side. On the opposite side here, Dave, the Buckeyes, look, it seems like they're finding their stride with that passing game with Sayin there as QB1, putting it together slowly here. But what are you hearing about the Buckeyes maybe planning to air it out in Washington?
They've been very efficient when they have taken shots, and Ryan Day is always going to take shots. He talks about it, but they know they have to run the ball. And this is, I have a lot of respect for Washington's defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters. He did a great job at Illinois as defensive coordinator in 2021 and 2022. Then went to Purdue as head coach. Tough place to go as head coach, but I think they did a great job getting Ryan Walters. And Julian Sayin has been very, very, very efficient. He's been poised. He did get rattled a couple times, it seemed like, against Ohio University 2 weeks ago. Buckeyes are coming off an off week, but overall for a redshirt freshman, I think he's been very poised. However, he's never, faced an environment like this. This is his first start on the road. He barely played last year. He got in a couple of games but didn't play. So it's really his first time ever going on the road. And, this is going to be a Washington team that's fired up. I think they should be ranked, in my opinion. So Ohio State's going to have to run the ball, but they will definitely take shots to Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and their wideouts.
Yeah, I think Dave is absolutely right about that last part. One of the big keys for Washington going into this game is just how much can they rattle Julian Sayin on his first road attempt. And going clear across the country, 3 time zones, the whole bit, it really is a lot to ask for a guy like Sayin. But obviously, one of the premier guys coming out of high school, 5-star recruit, went to Alabama, then obviously to Ohio State. He's seen big environments before. Obviously, he plays in front of 105,000 plus every week in Ohio Stadium. So it's not exactly like he hasn't seen big environments before, but in terms of being a hostile environment and going on the road, all those things compounded into one, Washington is certainly going to try to make it as tough for Julian Sayin as they possibly can.
It will be different for him, but when it comes to Washington, Demond Williams and Jonah Coleman, let's just say it will not be a problem for them. How deadly for us at home, Chris, that have maybe not had a chance to catch them on Saturdays? How deadly is this duo there?
Well, hopefully nationally, in terms of, Big Ten fans, they've seen, guys like Jonah Coleman and Demond Williams winning Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week awards. In fact, Washington's the only one, I think, if I remember correctly, in terms of every week that they've played, has had someone win a Player of the Week award. It was Jonah Coleman the first 2 weeks, and then it was Demond Williams for what he just did in the Apple Cup this past week, throwing for nearly 300 yards, running for nearly 90, accounting for 5 total touchdowns. I mean, he is really playing at a very high level, very efficient. His rating right now is right around 200. He's thrown 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. He is really making great decisions. And then you add Jonah Coleman to the mix, who, we've talked about it all year. He's really made an effort to try to add the passing and receiving component to his game. And he is now Washington's second leading receiver behind Denzel Boston. So you look at that three-headed monster with Jonah Coleman, Denzel Boston, and then Damon Williams running the show and giving the ball to the playmakers, and also running the ball at a very high clip too. They've become a very, very deadly trio.
Yeah, Ohio State's offense or defensive coaches definitely have a lot of respect for this Washington offense. And they compared Damon Williams Jr. To Kyler Murray. Both defensive coordinator Matt Patricia and head coach Ryan Day compared Williams to Kyler Murray. I had somebody going way back say he's like an Antoine Randall L that can throw better, going way back in the day to an Indiana quarterback, Antoine Randall L. So, yeah, and the running back Coleman reminds me of a guy that was at Ohio State a few years ago, about the same size, named Mayan Williams, but Coleman's better. He's a better version of that, much better. So you got Denzel Boston on the outside. So they've got that three-headed monster. Damon Williams is going to be tough for Ohio State to contain. Now, this defense, I think, is a little bit ahead of schedule after losing 8 draft picks off the defense. I think Patricia's doing a good job, but they haven't faced anything like this. I thought Texas would be a great test for them. It turns out, I think Texas is a very good defense. Offensively, they were way overrated coming into the year, so maybe that wasn't as great of a defensive performance as we thought in week 1. It was still very good. And again, this is a fast, physical, talented Ohio State defense, but they've never seen anything like this. A young man that can beat them with their legs. His legs can throw the ball. He's got a great running back, great receiver. This is going to be a heck of a test for Ohio State.
You talk about a test, the environment there, something that both of you have also hinted at here. And Chris, kind of put in perspective with Washington and Husky Stadium, the win streak there. You mentioned the fans, of course. What type of impact, if I'm at home watching this, what will I see?
Well, yes, you mentioned the win streak. It's right now it's at 22 games. I believe that's second only to Georgia nationally in terms of home winning streaks. And they've beaten some pretty good teams. They've beaten 4 ranked teams during that streak, beaten teams like Oregon, Michigan, Michigan State, USC, Boise State, Utah. So they've really been tested in terms of bringing some pretty tough teams into that environment and coming away victorious. So it's just one of those things where, again, the travel is going to be an issue. Washington fans know all about that because when they traveled on the road last year in the Big Ten, first year obviously in the conference, they lost every single game when they went on the road in the Big Ten. So, we know it's a problem. We know, Penn State experienced it, barely squeaking by USC when they had to go all the way out to LA. So I think the travel, along with the idea of playing in an environment like Husky Stadium, it's only going to be about 72,000 plus. So obviously that kind of a crowd in terms of pure size isn't going to be that daunting to an Ohio State team that sees a lot more fans than that on the daily when they play in Ohio State. But again, the fans being against them, I do expect Ohio State to really travel well. And there's a lot of Ohio State alum in Seattle too. So they're going to have their fair share of fans in the stands as well. I just think overall, Husky Stadium, greatest setting in college football, they say. It's going to be a heck of a day. And I think it's ironic that CBS, the last time they had a primetime game in Seattle, happened to be in 1986. And Washington happened to be hosting Ohio State in that game, and they beat them 40-7. Wow. So who knows? It's just a weird quirk of fate that happened. Who knows what's going to happen this Saturday?
Yeah, and last year, Ohio State's one trip to the Pacific Northwest, I think the environment at Oregon really got to them. I know they only lost the game by 1 point, and that was a really good Oregon team, but Ohio State talked about it. They got a little rattled because of the environment, and I expect the exact same thing on Husky Stadium. I was there 18 years ago in 2007 when Ohio State played there, and Ohio State eventually was able to take the crowd out of the mix to a certain extent. I don't think that's going to be the case this game. Ohio State was able to build a pseudo big lead in that game. So I've been there. I know what it's like. This is going to be an absolute raucous environment with the win streak, with a very good Washington team. And this is a watershed moment for them. They know it. They're playing the defending national champions, a team that's ranked #1 in the country. This will just really launch what Jedd Fisch is doing there. I've been impressed with what he's done overall. So, yeah, the Buckeyes know that this is going to be a tougher environment, but they said the same thing last year going into Oregon, and it still took them aback a little bit. So will that be the same case this year, or will they be more prepared for it? We shall see. A lot of it's going to depend on how the game's going. If Washington gets a big lead, or gets a lead, look out. This place is going to be going crazy.
It will be something to see at 3:30 Eastern, but before I let both of you gentlemen go, I need to pick a winner. I need you guys to pick a winner. And Chris, I'll let you have first home field advantage. Go.
Yeah, I think the home field advantage is definitely going to be something that you have to factor into the final score. I just really think that, Washington has not seen a defense like Ohio State yet. The way they run to the ball, their overall speed, just their athleticism, so many big playmakers on that defensive side of the ball. I do think Washington, with their skill players, has a chance to do something special, but I really do think the game is going to be won in the trenches, as those big games always do. Offensively, defensively, they've got to see if they can control that line of scrimmage. Washington's offensive line is very, very much improved over last year. But I got to say, defending national champions, like Dave said, #1 team in the country coming in. Washington is 1-13-1 all time against #1 teams. I just don't see this particular Washington team having enough to really get all the way over the line. But I think Vegas, in having it less than 10 points in terms of the spread, I think they've got it right. I think Washington ends up, hanging really tough in this game. But I'm thinking probably around 27-17, 27-21, something like that. But I do think Ohio State in the end is going to have enough. And I think Julian Sayin, makes enough plays and gets the ball to Jeremiah Smith, gets the ball to his running backs like Bo Jackson and those guys. And I think eventually they'll probably wear down Washington in the end.
I agree with Chris. I was, I thought the point spread would be more like 14.5, and I was thinking that's going to be way too high. I think it opened at 11.5, then it's gone all the way down to 8.5, and that seems right to me. Like I said, I think Washington, they're not even ranked. They should be. They're the most underrated team in the country. They're playing at home. So I do think Ohio State's going to win a relatively close game. I do think in the end, Ohio State's offense will be able to get the best of a good but banged up Washington defense, as we were saying earlier on. And, and Ohio State's defense could be the best in the country. We don't know. This is going to be their best test for sure, but they look like they might be the best defense in the country, at least one of the best. So I do think Ohio State's going to be able to at least contain Washington enough and then eventually overwhelm them on offense. But it's going to be a tough four-quarter game. There's no doubt in my mind. But I have Ohio State winning this game, somewhere around 7 points.
All right, double Buckeyes there in Saturday's game. Appreciated Chris and Dave for that analysis, leading us into the game of the week on Saturday on CBS. Don't forget, of course, #1. You see it there, Ohio State heading to Washington, Husky Stadium, where they have won 22 straight home games. The last time they lost, 2021. We'll see what happens on Saturday. We can catch it on CBS and Paramount+.